You've been stuck inside your apartment for 3 days because of a rainstorm. You have a solid roof, central heating, a fridge stuffed with snacks, unlimited high-speed Wi-Fi, and Netflix. Yet, by day 3, you're staring at the ceiling, existential dread creeping in, feeling like a tragic prisoner of war. Now, let's play a little game. Strip away the Wi-Fi. Strip away the fridge, the dry clothes, the insulated jacket, the hot coffee, the walls, and the roof. Drop yourself into a freezing, swampy forest in prehistoric Europe 60,000 years ago during a torrential rainy season that hasn't stopped for 3 weeks straight. The temperature is hovering just above freezing, exactly cold enough to kill you slowly. Fire? Impossible. Food? Waterlogged. Shelter? Non-existent. How long do you last? 3 hours? Maybe 6 if you're feeling stubborn? When we imagine prehistoric survival, we love to obsess over the Hollywood stuff, fighting off saber-toothed tigers, wrestling mammoths, or battling rival tribes. But teeth and claws weren't early humanity's worst nightmare. Rain was. Rain was relentless, unglamorous, and arguably killed more of our ancestors than any predator ever did. It extinguished fires, rotted food, flooded camps, and drained core body heat until your heart simply gave up. Yet, somehow, ancient humans didn't just survive endless monsoons and ice age downpours. They conquered them, without a single piece of Gore-Tex or a weather forecast app. How on earth did they do it? Let's find out.
To understand how ancient humans survived, we first have to understand what rain actually does to a human body. Aside from making you look like a drowned rat, the real killer isn't drowning. It's heat loss. Here's a fun physics fact that should terrify you. Water conducts heat away from your body roughly 25 times faster than air. That is not a minor inconvenience. That is a biological catastrophe. Sitting in a room with 10 degrees Celsius air feels chilly. Sitting in 10 degrees Celsius water means your core temperature plunges off a cliff before you can even finish complaining about it. In wet conditions, hypothermia doesn't need freezing temperatures or snow. All it needs is wet skin, a mild breeze, and a temperature of around 10 degrees Celsius, or 50 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a mild rainy day in Britain. That's a completely ordinary spring night across most of the globe. Ancient humans didn't learn thermodynamics from a textbook. They learned it by watching their friends freeze to death in their sleep. They realized very quickly that the most critical survival skill in the wild wasn't hunting a mammoth or finding berries. It was managing core body heat. And their solution to this problem was far more sophisticated than just hiding under a big leaf.
When it rains, your first instinct is to build a fire. But here's the paradox. Rain and fire are mortal enemies. Wet wood doesn't burn, wet tinder won't catch, and a fire exposed to a downpour dies instantly. And in a hypothermic environment, a dead fire isn't just frustrating, it's a death sentence written in wet ash. So how did early humans keep fire alive when the sky was dumping buckets of water on them? They changed their entire philosophy about fire. Modern humans treat fire as an event. You want a campfire, you light a match. Ancient humans treated fire as infrastructure, like a power grid that must never go down. Starting a fire from scratch with wet wooden sticks and damp moss is one of the most soul-crushing, impossible tasks known to man. So they simply refused to let it die out. Ancient groups carried fire with them wherever they went. They wrapped glowing embers in layers of slow-burning organic material, damp moss, specialized tree bark, or dried shelf fungi, and packed them inside hollowed-out horns or clay containers. These smoldering embers could stay alive for hours, even days, while the tribe marched through a downpour. Archaeological digs across Europe have uncovered hearths that burned continuously for years, not reignited repeatedly, literally kept alive day and night. This required the world's very first specialized job opening. Long before anyone was a full-time hunter or toolmaker, someone's sole job in bad weather was firekeeper. Your job wasn't to chase animals, it was to sit by the fire, shield it with your body, feed it dry wood stored under hides, and make sure the tribe didn't wake up as frozen corpses.
Now, you might think, why not just hide in a cave? Ah, the classic caveman myth. Pop culture loves picturing ancient humans huddled in caves because caves are where fossils get preserved. But in reality, caves were rare, frequently occupied by 800-pound cave bears, freezing damp and smelled terrible. Most ancient humans had to build their own housing, and their architecture was shockingly brilliant. The oldest constructed shelters date back 400,000 years ago, long before Homo sapiens even walked the earth. Early hominins took branches and angled them down to shed water, overlapping leaves and bark in angled rows, just like modern roof shingles. No engineering degree, no blueprints, just pure environmental intelligence. By 15,000 years ago, shelter design reached an elite level. In Eastern Europe, humans built massive dome shelters out of mammoth bones, anchored deep into the soil to resist hurricane-force winds, draped with stretched animal hides. An animal hide was the ultimate game changer. Untreated hide is naturally water-resistant because of its fat content. When early humans figured out how to scrape, stretch, smoke, and treat raw hides with animal fats or brains, they didn't just clean a carcass, they invented leather. Leather was the prehistoric version of Gore-Tex, flexible, incredibly durable, windproof, and waterproof. Think about the mental leap required here. This mammoth has skin. If I process this skin over 3 days using animal brains and smoke, it will keep me dry 3 weeks from now when it rains. That's not primitive instinct. That's abstract, long-term strategic planning. Rain didn't just threaten ancient humans. It forced them to get smarter.
Today, if we want to know if it's going to rain, we open a weather app, look at a radar map, get annoyed, and grab an umbrella. We have completely outsourced our survival instincts to technology. Ancient humans didn't have radar, but they had something far more reliable: absolute environmental literacy. They could read the sky the way you read a text message. Hours before a storm hits, the air changes. You know that fresh, earthy smell right before it rains? That's petrichor, and our noses evolved to detect it from miles away. Ancient humans could smell a weather shift coming. They watched bird flight patterns drop lower as atmospheric pressure fell. They noticed insects swarming differently and big game moving toward higher ground. They read cloud textures and wind shifts instantly. While a modern camper gets caught completely off guard by a sudden downpour, an ancient tribe would have smelled and read the storm 3 hours in advance. That gave them plenty of time to find high ground, collect dry firewood, and construct a rain cover before the first drop even hit the dirt. They didn't just react to weather, they anticipated it. Survival wasn't about luck, it was about paying attention.
Where you set up camp during a rainy season is a matter of life and death. Cold air sinks and water pools in valleys. Camp in a hollow on a rainy night and you'll wake up treading freezing water. Ancient humans understood terrain dynamics effortlessly. They deliberately chose south-facing slopes in the northern hemisphere because they received more sunlight and dried faster after rain. They camped under dense conifer stands or broadleaf canopies that intercepted up to 30% of rainfall before it ever touched the ground. They utilized natural rock overhangs, not because they were lazy, but because a rock shelf gave them a 50% head start on waterproofing. And what about their actual bodies? Are we biologically weaker than them? Well, yes and no. When a modern human falls into cold water, we suffer cold shock. We gasp uncontrollably, hyperventilate, and panic. But cold shock is a learned sensitivity. Ancient humans were exposed to cold, wet conditions daily. Their nervous systems were calibrated to it. Furthermore, populations living in cold, wet climates developed higher baseline metabolic rates and produced more brown adipose tissue, a specific type of body fat that burns calories to generate raw heat directly, rather than just storing energy. They weren't superhuman. They were just perpetually trained by a brutal environment that offered no thermostat to turn up.
Here is the most overlooked secret of rain survival. You cannot survive an endless monsoon alone. Solo survival in weeks of torrential rain is a Hollywood fantasy. Survival is a team sport. In extreme weather, ancient human tribes functioned as a social thermoregulation system. When a freezing storm rolled in, the tribe crammed together under hides. Shared body heat is a real physical mechanism. A group huddled together retains heat exponentially better than a single individual. Privacy is a warm weather luxury. When it's 5 degrees Celsius and pouring rain, you cuddle up with 20 sweaty tribal members and you don't complain about it. Rain also completely wrecks the food supply. Big game animals hide, tracks wash away, and digging for roots turns into a muddy nightmare. How did they not starve? First, through strategic food storage, burying caches of dried meat, nuts, and smoked fish in elevated dry structures weeks in advance. Second, they changed the menu. Heavy rain brings earthworms to the surface, causes fish to migrate in predictable flooding patterns, and makes snails, frogs, and mushrooms burst into abundance. When the weather changed, their diet changed. Flexibility was survival. And most importantly, they shared everything. Hoarding food while your tribe mate starves destroys the group's collective strength. If your firekeeper or shelter builder dies of hunger, you're next. Total cooperation wasn't a moral choice, it was raw survival logic.
If you look at a global map today, humans prefer mild, sunny climates. But ancient humans went everywhere, into monsoon-soaked tropical rainforests, flooded river deltas, and perpetually damp ice age tundras. Why? Because wet environments are hyper-productive. Heavy rain fuels lush vegetation, rich mushroom blooms, and teeming rivers full of fish. Early humans calculated that enduring the misery of wet weather was a small price to pay for an endless buffet of natural resources. They didn't view rain as an inconvenience that canceled their weekend plans. They viewed it as a condition to be mastered. Every technology we use today to keep dry, from Gore-Tex jackets and sloped shingled roofs to drainage pipes and central heating, is directly downstream from a cold, miserable night 50,000 years ago. It all started when an ancient group of humans sat huddled under a mud-draped hide, nursing a tiny glowing ember, stubbornly refusing to freeze to death. They figured it out first, with zero modern tools, using nothing but collective wisdom, raw grit, and the refusal to let the weather win. That wasn't primitive survival. That was the very foundation of human civilization.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update.